iris start to dilate or I flush. You know why? I'm not going to turn into the Red Hulk.
We're back, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of I Can Do This All Day. I'm Dan, the part-time Avenger. That is Mark, the resident Jedi.
Hello there. Today we're here to talk about something that is national and monumental and has absolutely nothing to do with any actual monument or actual nation, and that's villains.
Villains. So we are going to talk about our Mount Rushmore of villains for this episode. And for the Mount Rushmore, that is 4 particular villains that are near and dear to our hearts, or that we feel that are on our Mount Rushmore for one or multiple reasons. But the big thing for us is that as we ramp up 2025, we are getting ready to see a lot of movies. If you didn't catch the last episode or a couple episodes ago, we talked about all the movies that we were excited to see, or at least were really kind of invested in seeing. We are still waiting for some of those to come out. So as we thought about stuff, like we thought that, hey, Hollywood has been pretty shitty over the last couple of years, and we haven't seen anything. So they're the big villains. So we thought, why not talk about villains, our Mount Rushmore? And here we go. Mark, you want to talk about some of the prerequisites or some of the things that you thought of as we were coming up with these lists?
Yeah, as we were kind of thinking how we approach this, do we just do comic? Do we just do animated? Do we just do, something in a small area? And we decided to open it up. Open it up to everything that we've seen, big, small, medium screens. And because we each only picked 4, that left a lot of them out there. And I think that we did a few things to eliminate large groups, and we could put a few disclaimers in this podcast. First of all, Nazis and all Nazi-related things are bad and terrible villains, but we didn't want to justify them on Mount Rushmore.
It was close. I will say that I had
So close.
Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards on my honorable mentions list, because Christoph Waltz is just freaking fantastic in that role, and he is just an awful man, but so captivating and very, very interesting to see on screen.
Yes. Red Skull would have looked prodigious in stone, but we're not doing it. We're not doing it. And just in general, Hitler, bad person. But also,
Really? Yeah.
the root of many movies. Indiana Jones got his autograph, and also Captain America punched him in the face over 700 times.
With Captain America as one of the most celebrated heroes and characters on this podcast, hell, we even have Captain America Chris Evans Day on our July 4th episode. Maybe we should have like a villain and just dedicate it to that particular person and just go over like a whole bunch of villains. Well, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, we can do whatever you want. I'm just here to be a talking head.
Well, who else is on your honorable mentions list?
Palpatine.
He keeps on coming back.
He does. He keeps on coming back, but he keeps coming back as feebler and feebler. Magneto. I was like, I want to put him on the list. If it was comic villains, he'd be on the Mount Rushmore. But you gotta open it up. And a lot of people are on the Pennywise train. And then I think back to the Tim Curry movie that could do nothing but make me laugh. Because seeing Tim Curry in Pennywise makeup, using his Tim Curry-ish face, it just was not. It was a late night double feature that didn't really hit me as scary. It was just like, that's the guy from Rocky Horror and Home Alone 2.
Who some would say he was more scary in that movie compared to it.
I mean, if that was your hotel clerk sneaking into your room and pursuing you as a child, that is pretty scary.
Some might say that that's the hero that people deserve, not the hero that people need. But hey, for other villains, so you got a really good list there. But I wanted to come up with Terrence Fletcher was really, really close. Terrence Fletcher, J.K. Simmons' character from Whiplash, was this close to making it on my Mount Rushmore. The reason why I left him off is because even though he was just larger than life, just awful human being, I kind of liked him. So to me, it's not a 100% villain. And everyone that I'm going to put on this Mount Rushmore is going to be 100% villain in my eyes. Any other honorable mentions?
The titular character from Gone Girl, I think her name was Amy.
Ooh, God, what a
That's
psycho
just a
bitch.
psycho. But was
Ooh,
it a
I
villain
like that.
or just a crazy? Just a
Mm.
crazy. Also, the rationale behind Norman Bates, a
And
villain or just a
here on the I Can
crazy?
Do This All Day podcast, we do not shame the mental illness at all. So,
No, no,
but
no.
we will shame some of those fictional characters that are out there. Just
Oh,
to be
so
real,
many, so much
fictional,
shame,
fictional.
so much shame. I have one more that I was like, I should put this on the list, but due to recent theatrical releases, I don't know that we can continue to classify the Wicked Witch of the West as a
Mm.
villain if you look at things from a certain point of view.
I can't classify her as a villain because I don't care. And all these villains
Ah,
all the villains that we'll talk about today, including on your list, I'm sure I will probably care at least a smidge. Let's just dive right into it. So, the Mount Rushmore, 4 picks inspired by movies. Let's go off with the first villain on our Rushmore, and that's on yours. We got Hans Gruber. Talk to us a little bit about that pick.
just look at that face. Look at that face. If Alan Rickman doesn't deserve to be on the Mount Rushmore of villains, I don't know who does. Hans, so calculating, so debonair, such a wonderful, terrible, like Roy Rogers ass accent, and just super scheming. And, who doesn't like to ring in the new year without watching one of the greatest villains ever topple from the top of Nakatomi Plaza? Yippee-ki-yay.
I don't disagree with your pick. I think just the longevity, because I think you had said something prior to the podcast saying like, yeah, but this person was only in 2 movies. This pick was only in 1 movie, but of course the aura and after effects and just by reputation, he's a great villain. So I certainly think that he qualifies. He was also going to
Yeah.
be on mine, but I was like, I'm going to leave him off just because I would rather put another Lethal Weapon villain on that Mount Rushmore over the Die Hard villain, just because you all know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I stayed away from the Lethal Weapon villains solely for diplomatic immunity.
They're not great. The villains aren't great. The best one is going to be Jet Li, but we'll talk about that some other time. But yeah, we'll go on to one of our other picks, and this one is off of my Mount Rushmore. Heath Ledger's specifically Joker. So that character, I mean, I don't know. I saw that movie multiple times in theaters, and it wasn't because of Batman. It was because of Joker and Heath Ledger's portrayal of him. Like the laughs and reactions that movie theaters would get just off of his performance and his lines were fantastic. Not once was anyone, with the exception of people laughing at Christian Bale's grunts, like, oh, like people would laugh about that and react to that. But the legitimate, genuine reactions all came from Heath Ledger's Joker. And let's just talk about some of the characteristics he has. So some people just want to watch the world burn, and that is a really high qualifying factor for a villain, and that is the Joker in this movie. And who wants to see a magic trick? Prior to John Wick, he was the most deadly with a pencil. Awesome, awesome. And the guy's a sheer psychopath. He doesn't know. He's a dog chasing cars. He doesn't know what he's gonna do once he catches one. And I don't know, man. Any thoughts on that pick?
I like the Joker on on Mount Rushmore as a figurehead, right? As a completeness. This is
As a
not
whole,
this
like
is
comics,
as
TV,
a
everything.
character. This is
Okay.
my number three Joker. This is my number three Joker. Mark Hamill, Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger.
Yeah, and that's why we have different opinions on
That's
things.
why you and I differ. But as a character, fully support. And I think that because the character has been around for so long and has had so much longevity, there have been different stories, different iterations, different takes that lead to Joker in general having kind of a different personality esque as you roll through. And that's the cool part, right? Is it doesn't matter which one. That's why I like the character, not the ledger, but mad respect. There was hardware held out for this.
We have a Dark Knight
I
appearance
salute.
right here. And it's going to get darker as we go down this tunneling list of villains. But the next
Oh,
one up is someone who enjoys a nice Chianti with some fava beans. Hannibal Lecter.
hello. I This is like super chilling, right? Silence of the Lambs had two really strange characters in it. There was Hannibal, and then there was fucking Buffalo Bill, which like it's creepy,
How many
and
people haven't
definitely
pulled a Buffalo Bill in front of their spouses or significant others?
yeah,
Haven't?
no,
You haven't done
no,
that?
no. Why?
Ah,
Why? I call it a
hilarious.
muse. Let's be on it. Let's call it
Hilarious.
a muse. Let's go Clerks 2 on it.
Fair
Um,
enough. Fair enough.
but Hannibal, the genius and the absolute evil is such a cool balance. And Hopkins didn't necessarily put him on the map, but put him on the American map. And he does villain so well.
He does villains so well, and he does prestigious figures and likable people so well. And so that's why I was thinking about this because I feel like this is a no-brainer to put on a Mount Rushmore. But for me and the movies that I've watched, it didn't quite stick up to me like for like, hey, you need to put this on there because I haven't seen this in a while, and I didn't watch Silence of the Lambs until I was much older. So I appreciated it. I thought it was great,
Hmm.
but it wasn't, striking fear in my heart as a younger kid because I didn't watch it. So,
Did you see
uh,
the follow-up films to it though? Like
yeah,
Hannibal and
yeah.
that? Like, so just the way that I think they're able to carry the character's brilliance and ferocity into those films, right? It kept me going. Like usually, if you use the same villain in multiple movies, it gets lame. How many times are you going to beat this person, and how many times are they going to survive? Nobody beat Lecter. He just kept going. He got captured and escaped.
I guess the one thing that would, in my opinion, would keep him off Mount Rushmore is because of the fact that he collaborates with the in quotes good guys, the police and the
That's
FBI.
the best part, is that they're so close to him they can't get away from him, and he keeps coming back.
Yeah.
He keeps stalking Starling. The only thing that makes
Co-
me sad about that series is that they couldn't keep Jodie Foster in it.
I did like Edward Norton's relationship with him, which was like the prequel to Silence of the Lambs.
Hmm.
So that was pretty sweet. And I think overall, part of it is there's some Marvel tie-ins here because obviously he was Odin in the MCU, but I view Lecter as more of a Loki. Like Loki is one of the most popular villains in Marvel, and some would question, is he really a villain? So that's kind of like my thing for Lecter. Now, yes, is it bad to eat people? Of course,
Yeah,
a hundred
that's
percent.
the line for me. That's you found it. You found the demarcation is the eating people.
Great solid pick for your Mount Rushmore, and we're gonna go on to the next. That next one comes from me, the part-time adventurer, and that is going to be Thanos. Thanos to me was an easy pick for Mount Rushmore, just because of the fact that like when you take a look at the resume of villainy that you have for him, is he just decides to be like this savior of the people. All villains think that they're the savior and the person that's going to do something right by the people, and yeah, he wants to wipe out half of existence and all living beings, just so that way there can be more resources. And then there's the argument, well, if you have all that power, why wouldn't you just double the resources? Because that's not what villains do. That's why. And when he sacrifices his adopted daughter that he loves the most for power, that's some hardcore shit. And he has a battle of, or like a bevy of minions, basically, that just fight alongside him. And one of the most important things for me to really push him onto that edge of the Mount Rushmore is the villains not only don't care about the good guys, but they don't care about the bad guys either. So during the heat of battle in Endgame, where he's just like rain fire, and then I think it was Ebony Maw was just like, "But Saya, our troops," and he's just like, "Just do it, you little bastards," and then just annihilates not only some of the villains but also some of his army as well. But yeah, he just doesn't care. He does not give an F, and he's inevitable. And I love my villains being inevitable. They have to do their villainy. They have to make their impact. They have to make that sonic boom to where the good guys are just like in shock and can't move on and can't figure out what else to do. So that's my villain.
I have no problem with Thanos. I again when I was going through this, he was on my like Marvel or comic movie based list. Just fell off of the other one. But think of that ball sack chin, it just etched in granite. Think about the cool icicles in the winter.
I mean, you can't have a villain without some indecency. So why not put a little bit of indecency on that Mount Rushmore, right? And I think Josh Brolin really did a fantastic job portraying him, and it made me like Brolin a whole lot more. And Brolin, I think, is an underrated guy that could just bring so much more to villain roles, or at least like that dark, sinister role, kind of like that ambiguous role that he has in Sicario. He's someone that does something that needs to be done, but it's not pretty. And Thanos just does a whole lot of not pretty stuff. So
Yeah,
that's
I
why he's
think
on
that
that
the best
list.
part about Brolin in this role is as much as he is a known actor and face, it's not like, oh, it's Josh Brolin. Like it didn't
Yeah.
jump out to you. And that I think is a great test to somebody putting a character out there is there's no reference or like your mind doesn't take you to all of the other things that they've done, right? And I think that Marvel's done a pretty good job of that through the years. This is probably their best as far as villain.
I'm wondering, and I think I'm going to call it right now. I'm sure you've probably heard the rumors where James Gunn and DC are trying to get Brolin cast as something in the DCU. I honestly think that he's not going to pick up on that because he has a bigger role in the MCU and he's going to be back as Thanos. I think that's gonna
Back as
happen. Now, there's
Thanos
been some
again.
rumors. Thanos
Well,
again.
it seems like they need to. They're bringing like they had a bunch of stinkers, and they lost their main villain, and they've been panicking, and so they're bringing everybody back for
Yeah,
Doomsday and Secret Wars. Or
I'm
wait,
here for it.
it's not Secret Wars, is it?
Yeah, it's Secret Wars.
Okay, yeah, they're bringing them back. Just everybody, you,
Yeah,
Evans,
you
come
were
back, baby.
you were hesitant on the secret because there was the secret invasion. Don't tell anyone. There's an invasion, and
Oh.
that series sucked. That series
Yeah, I was
sucked.
hesitant on the secret because I'm like, they've changed everything, right?
You said
They- you
you
know,
said Secret Wars so many times while we were reviewing Secret Invasion and leading up to it, and then just vice versa. It's like I think it's scarred into you now. So
yeah, I just don't. I wasn't excited about it because everything that they'd done leading up to that, after they ended this villain, basically, has been just other than the Spider-Man Far From Home movie. That kind of that the I loved Mysterio in that. But basically every other movie the villain's been kind of shit.
you
Especially
don't think like
Eternals.
you don't think like Green Goblin and
Well, no, I mean that arguably is a villain from an older movie, right?
okay, so you're just okay. I got
Like
you.
they haven't introduced a new face.
Fair
I mean
enough.
they did the same trick essentially. They're like, "Wait, everybody loved Willem Dafoe. Let's get him back. Get Doc
Yeah.
Ock. Get all these guys, but not new ones. Get the old ones, baby."
All right, but going down this list of the Mount Rushmore villains, we've got Sauron from Lord of the Rings, and Mark is going to talk about this one because I know nothing about it because I've never seen Lord of the Rings before, but I respect
Uh
his pick.
yeah, as many of you know, Dan dislikes animated things as well as things that take place in olden times.
I do
So
like magic and dragons, though.
I mean, there is magic in
I
this.
was,
There are
I'm
not
kidding.
dragons. There's real big
For
eagles.
anyone who doesn't get that reference, that was Andy Dick and Old School. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of that stuff. So
You're my
I
boy,
tried to
too.
get into Lord of the Rings, and I think I watched the first movie, but I just couldn't get into it. And I was the same way with Game of Thrones, but I ended up liking Game of Thrones. So maybe I just need to give it another shot.
I mean, Sean Bean's in both. and dies
Dies in
prodigiously
both.
in both.
I was gonna
Um,
say, yeah.
yeah, no, we got that. I think that Sauron for me is a cool villain because of the multi phases of Sauron, right? And it's he's the key villain in what is a huge lore, and not LOTR, but all of the books surrounding this. He's like the keystone villain. I just watched the movies and I really liked it, and I thought it's that villain that is, Voldemorty, in that it was immortal, but Voldemort was kind of lame, in my opinion, not very brutal, and was kind of a bitch in the end. So that's
Mm.
why Sauron over Voldemort, hands down. How cool is it that you come back as a flaming eye and, trick other wizards and make all of your minions out of, like, bodies and stuff like that. It's some dark shit, man. Dark magic from a dark master.
I go back and forth on the whole Lord Voldemort thing because I wanted to put him on my list, but I was like, I don't think he's that great of a villain. I think Ray Fiennes is like fantastic
Oh,
portraying him, but I think that Snape might be the better villain than him because he goes back and forth so much, and you like him, then you don't like him, and he's like, oh God, he really is a prick. Like he really wants to kill that Harry Potter. He doesn't give a shit about him, but he ends up protecting him and arguably, supposedly the biggest protector of Harry overall.
yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
Snape's a hero in that, man. It's all
Yeah,
under the surface, baby. We need a
yeah.
Snape Wicked is what we need to rise up. Alan Rickman rising up, not falling down, in that role. But yeah, Voldemort to me, if you're that powerful, how did you lose 7 times? There's 7 Harry Potter movies, right? How did you lose 7 times?
Good villains don't have that shitty of henchmen.
Mm-mm.
So that's the problem.
Mm-mm.
That's the
That's
problem.
a great measurement. How shit are your henchmen?
Yeah. Or if you don't have henchmen, I think that knocks you up the list as a better villain because like, hey,
Also,
it's all me. All me. I'm doing all this bad shit.
that is a wonderful call out halfway through Mount Rushmore.
Going into the next pick, I mean, is it really the I Can Do This All Day podcast unless we talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator?
No henchmen here, just some giant pythons.
Oh my gosh. This had to be on my list because for all of you who know, I love Terminator. The movie I've probably seen the most out of everything. But the Terminator can't be reasoned with, can't be bargained with. He doesn't feel pity or remorse, and he doesn't stop until you are dead. And the reason why he doesn't stop is because he keeps on like throwing you instead of just crushing your larynx. But it's still awesome. He has an amazing plethora of knowledge about weapons, except for not realizing that the plasma rifle and 40-watt range is not available in 1984. I'll be willing to forgive that. You know, like that's just so
Can I ask a
ridiculous.
real Terminator question? Like,
Yeah.
I want to ask this to somebody who's a real fan about this Mount Rushmore villain. Why didn't he kill more people Three Stooges style? If you want to talk about a guy that could kill through eye gouge with zero problem,
Not the
never,
most
not
effective killing,
once.
though.
No,
Not the most
what?
effective.
Eyes, scrambly brain, not effective? What are you talking about?
I mean, it's not cinematic enough, I don't
It's
think.
just, it's not. It's not. It needs to be in black and white and on TV and reruns, apparently.
Yeah. But no, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Terminator. That movie, one of the best, and in some people's minds, best horror movies out there. But of course, it's a science fiction movie as well. Blended the genre very nicely, along with a little bit of action. The overall mechanics, and I say mechanics because that's how Arnold Schwarzenegger played him. Like the Terminator is very mechanic and it's very methodical, and it's just going through. Like, who would have thought that flipping through a phone book could be as suspenseful as it was? Like, why the fuck is he doing this? Like, you're curious as to what's going on, and he's just looking in the yellow pages and the white pages to find out where Sarah Connor lives, and he's just going to go down the list and kill. And luckily for Sarah Connor, John's mother, she was a little bit further down the list.
I have a serious question for you about this character. I
Oh,
know
it's
that
always
you
serious when it comes to Terminator.
It is. It is. I know that you love Arnold in this role, and you find him mechanical and ominous and intimidating. But in retrospect, had the originally aimed for targeted actor been cast, would this
There's
movie be scarier?
there's two that were originally thought. So
Mhm.
originally, I'm sorry, Lance Henriksen was supposed to be the Terminator, and then it was the Juice, O.J. Simpson, but no one could buy him as a
That
killer.
the juice is who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I
Would
figured
this
as much,
movie
but
be
I
more
just wanted to throw it
terrifying
out
right
there.
now if it was the juice?
Um, I think it would have been very ironic because no one would have believed it. I think the movie itself probably would have been a failure.
But think about it on video after that. Like
Yeah, yeah. I'm
cult classic we wouldn't have got Terminator 2. Wouldn't have got Terminator 2. Definitely not anything past that. But
it'd be interesting to play a little Terminator scenario on this. If he would have gotten Terminator and would have been the villain, would he have still killed later on? Or would his celebrity have been at such a high point that he would have been like, everybody loves the juice. Hey, Twitter world, everyone loves OJ. Like,
um,
would he be as loved as Arnold is now?
I mean he was.
He was until
He
he killed
was.
someone. But would this
That's what
have
I'm saying. Like,
catapulted? Would this have catapulted him to the point where like, this is a complete what if scenario? He would have been catapulted into the stratosphere for his acting career, and I don't know if he would have been so. He would have been too busy like pulling tail from like every Hollywood party that he'd go to.
the juice didn't have any problem with that already, though. He was the
Yeah,
Jew.
but it would have been in a different league. We're not. I mean, he wasn't even in the same fucking sport as Arnold Schwarzenegger, so I don't know. Not even the same ballpark, not even the same fucking sport. But hey, this pick on the Mount Rushmore goes to the Terminator, the OG Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and of course we'll talk about him again because he'll be back. But the next pick goes to one of or I'm sorry, my last pick for Mount Rushmore, and that is Biff Tannen from the Back to the Future series. Now, I know what you all might be thinking. Like, really? Back to the Future had a villain? Absolutely. And that villain's name is Biff Tannen and the Tannen legacy line. However, Biff Tannen specifically is the true villain, doesn't give a fuck, and is just ruthless from a just flat out sexual deviant, assaulting people. But I mean, he's a villain in different generations. How awesome is that for a villain on Mount Rushmore? The fact that he himself, there's a lot of self made men that are successes. He is a self made man of success and villainy, to where he found that sports almanac, went back in time, told his younger, stupider self, like, hey, we've fucked up over the years, but all you have to do is bet on these winners. And what happens after that? The world turns upside down. It's crazy. The whole world is run by Biff, and there's drugs and prostitution everywhere. The Cubs won the World Series. Oh, what a disgusting place. It is just awful. But Biff Tannen, that's him. Pick for Mount Rushmore. Any thoughts?
So I'm gonna point out a few things to you here. Um, First of all, the Cubs didn't win the World Series in the Biff future. They won the series in the no Biff future.
No, they won.
In the
They won it in the Biff future.
in the future where Biff is old man Biff, not where he's Donald Trump Biff.
When he comes, well, yes, 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 but
Yes. So don't blame
true.
Biff for the Cubs winning the World Series and don't make it such a terrible thing. But
I don't. But for the record, I'm from the Chicagoland area originally. I was always a Sox fan, but I'm not an anti-Cubs fan. I just thought it was funny, just to ruffle Mark's feathers.
um no, I agree on the villainy of Biff Tannen. I think it's a good classic movie trope villain. And I mean, what better way to display how to build a Trump is just find a way to cheat and keep cheating. Cheat your way to the top of the tower.
I don't know, man. There's something about him where I think we all love a goofy villain, right? A goofy villain that's still menacing, but is his own worst enemy. And that's one of the big things for like he is definitely his own worst enemy. And he knows his weaknesses as he got older. He was like, "Oh yeah, that old crazy man was like he knew something." And like he's too stupid to realize that was him in the future. but it's just it's a comical thing where you can have a menacing villain and he's also a little bit of a moron. So why not bring a little bit of stupidity into Mount Rushmore? Because if you think about it, it's kind of silly to etch a bunch of people's faces into the side of a mountain.
You're not wrong, butthead. Um, I will say, not a political statement, an actual like admission from the filmmakers that Rich Biff was modeled after 80s Donald Trump.
Was he
Like
really?
they're
Oh
like,
man, I've
what would he would open a casino and do all kinds of shady deals. And they're just like, it's very Trumpy. Um, early Trump, not orange Trump. Um, though I don't know what color he was at that point. But I also, to the stupidity of Biff, love that. And I recently saw this on a reel and it made me go Back to the Future too. But when Biff goes to return the DeLorean and is like hiding as they go away. Did you ever catch the deleted scene? Or I don't know if it's part of the regular scene, but they don't pan down to it, where when he goes back to 19, oh my God, to 2015, um, that he disappears after he returns the DeLorean because
no, I
he
don't think I.
changed his past so much that he did not live to old age.
Oh,
Apparently, the
huh.
backstory behind that was that Lorraine eventually fucking shot him.
I did hear that. And right when you said that, then yes, I did. I remember hearing that, but I don't know if is that part of the theatrical part or is it just like a
I think it's a deleted scene.
okay, all right,
But
that
they don't show old Biff ever again in that movie.
right, right until they go into the future and Biff is still there. So that's where I guess it's a good thing that they deleted it because like obviously he amassed all his fortunes to get to where he was, but I would think that by Back to the Future rules, that would mean he was just set up for life, but
He
who
disappeared.
knows? Separate timelines. No one ever had problems with timelines back in Back to the Future
They
Terminator. But
followed the
now
rules.
with all these fucking like quantum physics and scientists and people telling us it's wrong, including Dr. Bruce Banner. Like, wow, we've been thinking about it all wrong. Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, everyone. That is my final pick for the Mount Rushmore. But let's go on to your final pick, and that is Darth
Vader.
Vader.
I feel like you can't do a Mount Rushmore without this angular character. Would look great in granite, but also, is there a more villainous villain out there? I understand that, started as a hero, but just turned, was coerced, killed a bunch of kids, killed many throughout the galaxy, total badass, and then was, ended up being a good guy in the end a little bit. There was a little villain resolution towards the end, but I mean, such an ominous villain. Michael Myers asked before there was Michael Myers, just constantly coming forward that you never saw him run as Darth Vader.
If I paid attention to him not running, he may have fallen under the RoboCop disqualification of life because I hate RoboCop because he never runs, except in the new movie. I guess he runs, but yeah, RoboCop sucks. But I never thought that about Vader because as a villain, it's okay if you walk. Like you could walk everywhere knowing that you're going to get your guy. And the fact that you have the power of the Force and number number one, torture your daughter and your son almost to the brink of death and force choking people just as you want. You're sitting there in the cafeteria and Bill in engineering just makes a wisecrack and you just do the force choke. It's just it's funny to me. So I'm all for it. But he was menacing, and I think a lot of it has to do with that helmet. If Darth Vader did not have a helmet, I don't think he would have been the same unforgettable villain as he is today.
I don't disagree, and I think that that's a trope that may not be as heavily used because it's so difficult to pull off. I don't think enough people. Kylo Ren, don't love him. Adam Driver being able to use the lack of of facial expression to be more emotion filled as a villain was amazing to me. Vader voiced over after the fact, right? If you
Yeah.
looked at Vader with the actual soundtrack, which is widely available on the internet, right? The actual guy speaking the lines, it was not as cool until you added that James Earl Awesome to it. But I just think that Star Wars in general gave such an expressionless villain. And I think one of the first one of the first movies I can really remember, and that's even in continuity, right, where all the villains were faceless.
If I'm not mistaken, I think James Earl Jones did give permission for his voice to be used in the future as Darth Vader, correct?
He is forever Vader.
If that's not a villain, I don't know what is. Just selling your
Ah,
soul to the devil and just say like, "Hey, I'm gone, but use my voice for all that you like." Interesting, interesting. And no disrespect to James Earl Jones, I think he was one of my favorite actors in the '80s and '90s. Just because every time I saw him on screen, I was like, "Oh, that's Darth Vader," but like, "Oh, he's a cuddly grandpa in this one." I'm like, "Oh no, he's a very uh, just piss and vinegar filled type of protagonist." It's like I like him. I like him as an actor, and I think it was a perfect balance of number one, the color of black and his red lightsaber, two, his voice, but three, just the overall just almost circumstances that were in the universe that he just was an indomitable force, very much like Thanos. Like he would go around and people are just like, "Uh-oh, put your head down. Don't mess around with him. That's Lord Vader." And yeah, I'm all for it. So I'm very happy with your pick. So let's just give a critique of an overall pick of our villains on our Mount Rushmores. Anyone that you would disagree with overall, or after talking about it, anything that you would want to change up?
I don't have a disagreement with you on any of yours, and I think it's really hard to narrow it down to four. When you really think about this, it's who's affected you, who's really the most ominous, and what the circumstances. I mean, in any of these more superpowered, or outside of normal humanity, universes, if you bring in a Biff or a Hannibal, like they're not going to do well, right? If you try and pit them against a Thanos, a Vader, a Terminator, any of that, they're not going to do so well. Let's be honest. You bring a Gruber into that as well, like, yeah, right? But how they affected their world is really how I tried to approach this from a pick perspective, and that's what makes it so hard to drive down to four. And we can knit and pick and all of those things, but I mean, great villains make great movies. And the one thing you'll notice about this list, none of them led films past, was it 2019 when Endgame dropped?
It's interesting, and we'll see if there's going to be some villains that come out in the movies of this year, and I'm hopeful. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I will be patiently waiting for Superman Legacy, and we'll see how Nicholas Hoult and his portrayal of Lex Luthor works out.
I have no Lex Luthor interest whatsoever. Was
Okay.
never a good character, is not a good
Ooh,
character. Only liked Gene Hackman in it because it was so over the top.
Gene Hackman was a good Lex Luthor, but my Lex Luthor is going to be Michael Rosenbaum. So that's
Oh,
just
no.
I like the young portrayal of him and his partnership with Clark and friendship with Clark, but before everything went down. But I don't know. We're getting ahead of ourselves once again because we are a podcast of the future. So we're always forward thinking, trying to make sure that we give you the best awful horseshit ideas about movies and television. But that wraps up our episode of our Mount Rushmore of villains inspired by movies. I am Dan, the Part-Time Avenger. That's Mark the Resident Shut-Eye.
Don't forget, like, subscribe. Let us know if you want to know more about how we rank things. What should our next Mount Rushmore be like? But don't forget, hit us up. I Can Do This All Day podcast at all the socials. Like, subscribe, give us the thumbs up, and tell us who had the better Mount Rushmore news.
Ooh, here we go. Let's put it out there. Everyone on our social media, listeners, viewers, everyone, let's put a vote. Who had the better Mount Rushmore? Mark, you still have one to pay up on, and oh boy, I am waiting for that day to pay up for it. But yes, audience, you decide. We'll see you next time.